Good afternoon. My name is Pearl Winkler. I'm delighted to have you here. Thank you so much for giving up your time today. I am a licensed behavior specialist consultant, and I've been in the industry for about 15 years. Today, I'm going to share with you the nudging technique. For the next 30 minutes, I want you to take a trip with me. We're going to be learning all about the nudging technique. The reason why the nudging technique will be of importance to you is because the nudging technique will give you tools to be able to adjust behavior and alter outcomes in other people. So let me ask you now, before we proceed, have any of you ever heard of the nudging technique? By show of hands? No, not heard of the nudging? Okay, one of you has, okay. How many of you think you've ever experienced a nudge? How many times do you think you've been nudged in a day? Okay, so we're seeing about 4 show of hands, 5 show of hands for having experienced a nudge. So, without further ado, we're going to go through the learning outcomes for today's session. This is what you will be able to do at the end of this session. Number 1, you're going to be able to explain what a nudging technique is. Number 2, you're going to be able to identify nudging techniques and predict their outcomes. And the third outcome for today will be you'll be able to design a nudging technique and evaluate somebody else's nudging technique. So, nudging techniques, what are they? We're going to watch a little video and then we're going to talk about the nudging technique. It was a video of Wile E. Coyote, and we saw how he was trying to catch the roadrunner. Beep, beep. And of course, he's never successful, but he was able to put into place different measures, different nudges he tried to do to try and get the attention of the roadrunner. So, let's talk a little bit more about what a nudging technique is. Permit yourselves to travel with me. Have you ever heard of the term the road less traveled? You ever heard that? The road less traveled. Think in your mind, there are 2 paths. Typically, let's say there's one way to peel a banana. Most people will go the regular path. This is the road that is often traveled. But suppose if you turn the road less traveled, the other path, there was something better waiting for you over here at the end of peeling your banana. Sometimes the humans are conditioned and programmed to act in certain ways. One of the beauties about the nudging techniques is that they play on human tendencies. They predict human behavior, right? So the definition of the nudging technique, nudging techniques adjust behavior by predicting outcomes so that different results occur. Stay with me. Nudging techniques.
Nudging techniques.
It's a definition. Thank you so much. Nudging techniques, they actually purpose to adjust behavior by predicting how people will react so that they will do something different. In the example that I gave you of a banana, imagine most people when they pick up a banana, they usually peel it from top to bottom. But did you know that there's actually ways to open a banana from the bottom that's actually a lot easier than from the stem? The road less traveled. Also want to consider the nudging technique as though it were a pot at the end of the rainbow, a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, right? Somebody may not journey, but there's something more favorable that you'll find at the end of the nudging technique. Nudging techniques were designed to be positive. They're designed to be not harmful to the individual, all right? We're going to look at the history, a brief history of the nudging technique. There was a gentleman by the name of Richard Thaler. And in 2008, he and another gentleman by the name of Cass Sunstein, yes, they wrote a very famous book called The Nudge, right? And essentially, the nudge it's a way of adjusting the environment using gentle encouragements to modify behavior. You adjust the environment using gentle encouragements to modify behavior. So we have a situation where if I want somebody to pick up their socks, let's say, I can go on and on and on about it, or perhaps I could try putting a hamper. Which one do you think would be most effective? Nagging, 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 go on and on and on and on. You keep leaving that sock there, or could I possibly try putting a hamper here? The nudging technique would be a way of adjusting the environment. The environment would be changing that sock being on the floor by putting a different measure in place, which would be the middle measure, and then in the hope that instead of being inclined to maybe throw that sock on the floor, the person will put it in the hamper. Let's go and see how nudges work. Nudges work in the brain, and they play on the fast, quick thinking reaction that our brains use. They work by tapping into our subconscious, right? It's a very quick decision-making process. I'm not going to try and, I know we don't have any physicians in the house. We do have one physician in the house. We have a business person, we have a communications, we have 2 athletes. So we're not going to do the physics of how the brain works, but I will show you that the nudging technique actually works on the subconscious level, right? There are 2 routes. Your brain, when it makes a decision, it's either going to just go with impulse, very fast, not too much thought, or it's going to be very slow and controlled. Nudging techniques are designed to play on people not wanting to take the time to think too hard, people not wanting to read between the lines. Now, this is the hardest part of the session, the hardest part in terms of just listening. I don't like this idea of sitting down and doing the lecture style, but I'm just giving you some background into the nudging techniques because it's far more interesting when we implement it. Advantages of the nudging technique: they are easily implemented, extremely easy to implement. Nudging techniques also require no instructions and no advertising. Nudging techniques are also relatively cost-free, not much money involved, and they are effective without having to push somebody or force somebody or coerce somebody into using them. Now, if I said to you that nudging techniques don't require advertising, immediately what industry comes to mind that may be interested in using the nudging techniques? No advertising involved. Who might be interested in using nudging techniques? There's the clue, no advertising involved. What industry?
Marketing.
Businesses, marketing, exactly. Now, we're not going to force anybody, no cost involved. What industries might be interested in not having to spend any money, but to be able to get an idea across? Who might be interested in it? What industries? Politics, exactly right, exactly right. So you have, in fact, and this is how we're really skimming the surface of the essence of the nudging technique, But nudging techniques are so prolific. Governments use them, businesses use them, hospitals use them, health uses them, education departments use them. There's a lot of extensive research on the nudging techniques. So now, stay with me if you will. I wonder if you can remember, or if you can explain to me what a nudging technique is. It's a way of adjusting behavior based on predicting how you think people are going to respond, and then you hope to get a different response. So you adjust behavior, and then you hope to, based on what you think people are going to do, expecting a different result. So let's begin. I want you to look with me. Your first slide, there's a picture there. What do you see? It's a picture of somebody. In fact, I'm not going to tell you. We're going to just briefly throw it out there. Unfortunately, we've had problems with that overhead, so now we have a separate screen in front of the audience members, and I'm looking at a screen here. But the first slide is a picture of somebody doing what exactly? And I need you to speak up because it's important. What is that person doing?
Traveling.
Okay. And I'm going to help you out with the first one because I'm going to get your mind in tune. What was the thought behind this writing on the escalator? Do you usually see writing on the escalator?
I bring the right side people walk, the left side people walk up.
Right, exactly. So people on the left would, it says sport, and on the right it says pause. So whoever designed this, what do you think they wanted to do? What?
See who we wanted to climb the escalator.
See who wanted. Any other thoughts?
See who's fast, who's slow.
Who's fast, who's slow? Could there be anything about wanting people to be patience? Is it good? I didn't even think about some of these. What about what's the purpose of your steps? Right. So all of these things may be in the mind of the person who created this idea. So the message is telling people what should they do. Somebody who gets on the escalator, what is the message? If you saw that, if that was you and you walking up the escalator, what would it tell you? What would you think it was telling you to do?
Choose a side that you want.
Probably this way.
Okay. What nudge did they use to get this done? They used, for example, that this was a measure put in place by the US government, and it was designed to encourage people to be healthy. So at the outset, what they wanted to do was get people to consider moving instead of just standing on an escalator. If you walk up an escalator, that might give you, if you walk up an escalator, right, give you incentive to help you burn some calories, right? And it probably help people to do, it's a way of getting a little bit more exercise in. Okay, let's go to the next slide. What is the issue? What was the aim? What nudge was used? So we have a picture here, right? I'm going to give you a little bit of background. This parent has been walking out for 2 hours trying to get this child to sleep. Okay? So, what was the issue? Throw it out. What was the issue?
Too much stimulation on the kid.
Okay.
A lot of stress. Time consuming.
Think about the parent. The parent's been trying to put this child to sleep for 2 hours and they haven't gone to sleep.
Stress.
Right. Okay. So, ultimately, what was the parent trying to do? Put that child to sleep. And possibly, why do you think he opted to use that bottle? What could have been the reason? There's no right and wrong. We're just
Full stomach.
So this parent designed a little apparatus where that they could be hands-free for a start, because if you can imagine trying to put a child to sleep, you need a break as well. So here you have a way that the parent has managed to leave that child feeling comforted and they walked off. Did they need to advertise that to the child? Did they need to give the child any instructions? Did they need any costs involved? Very simple, very easy. That's the nature of the nudge. Now, how many drivers do we have in here? We have 3 drivers, 1 soon-to-be driver, 1 who drives into bikes and trees and cars without brakes, right? So what we have here, now, this was a nudging technique that was used by the government of Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It's extremely subtle. And I want you to just allow yourselves, give yourselves a moment. The nudging technique is designed to change the environment with a view to adjusting behaviors. to encourage favorable outcomes, otherwise that people wouldn't usually take. DMV implemented a measure on the application forms. Because people are programmed to go for the default, they would usually, most people probably say no, even if they don't mean no. It's just like a natural response, a human tendency. On the application form, you see here what was the issue? The issue was that there was a shortage of organ donors. So what they decided to do was default that everybody's automatically an organ donor. And the only way you don't become an organ donor is if you don't deselect. So in order to not be an organ donor, you have to deselect. There was a subtle nudge used by the government to increase organ donors. So technically, people actually agreed to organ donation and didn't even realize they were doing it. All right? Okay, I need to hear from you. What's this last picture? Where we go? What is the issue? What do you see? What happened? What nudge would you use?
Improvising, the only open spot.
Punishment spot? Bad kids?
I mean, any of the above. Any of the above. Now, how do you think that was very interesting? Think it was a creative measure to use?
I think it's good.
It's pretty cool, right? So we can use nudges. Now, suppose I told you that that couch broke 4 months ago, and the wife had been harassing her husband, please fix the couch, and he refused to. So he came home one day, and this is what he saw. That's one explanation for it. Another explanation could be that children came home and they wouldn't stop sitting in a chair, and then they decided to do this. All right? So there's lots of different explanations. Nudges are creative ways of adjusting behavior so that there's a different outcome. The outcome was they wanted to be able to sit on the couch, just like the crime spot. They weren't going to miss their seat, so this is what they opted to do. Right. Last one, and then it's your turn. You've had enough history about the nudge technique. You understand that it is designed to encourage changing behavior and other things that people wouldn't usually do. So, what is the issue in this photograph?
Just too many people trying to walk through the construction area.
Okay, okay. And pothole, too many people. Anything else?
Too many signs.
Too many signs, okay. What needs to happen?
The traffic needs to be diverted.
Absolutely, spot on. So what was done for that to happen? What did they do?
They barricade the lane.
And what type of nudge did they use?
Force.
They use force? Nudges are not forceful. They don't use force. But thank you.
Redirection.
Redirection. Now, do you think they needed to advertise that? There were no cost involved because it's just a sign. But can you understand? I hope you begin to think about what a nudge can do and how it works. Right? Is that easy enough? You begin to understand? What does a nudge do? It allows you to adjust people's behavior by predicting how you know they're going to operate and changing something. So in this scenario, you're looking at this picture, there's a pothole. So instead of wanting people to drive through it, you know that people will technically drive through it. So you put something in place to prevent them so they can go around. Right? There's something special I didn't tell you. After today, you are going to be awarded a new title that you can add to your resumes. You are now choice architects. If you're able to design your own nudging technique, you become a choice architect. So now it's your turn to try. Groups of 2 and 3. What you're going to do, I want you to talk amongst yourselves for 2 minutes, and this is your dilemma. I'll read it aloud for you. I'll give you 2 minutes to look at the slide. It says, you can read for yourselves, Kelly wants to leave the marriage because Ken keeps missing and peeing on the floor. All right? Before you discuss, I want you to take your index cards, which you have placed in front of you. I want you to write down a nudge that you would use. Don't let anybody else see it. Okay? Think about the concepts that we spoke about. Nudges are designed to change the environment, adjust behaviors to encourage more favorable outcomes. All right, we're going to facilitate some change, look at the behaviors of others. There's no right or wrong, all right? When you finish, you can just raise your hand and I can pass you do is, you don't have to put your name in, it's not required, it's more discussion. Because I really am hoping that you guys have an opportunity to be able to explain what a nudging technique does and what it is. We still have some time. I'll just collect these. Now, in groups of 2 and 3, just take another minute and discuss the situation at hand now. All right? See, bounce some ideas of your neighbor, consider it, discuss. What would you do? What do you think the real issues are? And how might you rectify those issues? Just have a few moments to talk amongst yourselves. See if you can.
Y'all know those puppy pee train pads, you put those around so. Everything waking us up.
I wouldn't say you need to burn the ceiling, so you can't eat.
See, that other fool, they mop it up with the whiskey.
Remember, you're supposed to work in groups of 2. This is a technique called think, pairing, and sharing. Right? So you'll interact with one another.
Put like a dirt speck inside the toilet. The dirt speck inside the toilet. Because when there's everything in the toilet, guys, subconsciously that came out.
Is that real? Honestly? Is that
Am I
how you
wrong?
He's right.
All right, I think through the giggles, everybody's finished the discussion. So what we're going to go ahead and do, come back in your 2s now, please, and 2s and 3s, and let's see what we wrote. Remember, our objectives for today was to be able to explain what a nudging technique is and when to use it. So who thinks that they've earned the title of a choice architect? Reese, go for it.
Oh.
I saw you got there.
I was thinking you could put a dirt speck in the toilet.
Can you pause for one moment? I want overall definition of what you think a nudging technique is, or how would you explain it in your own words? We're going to bring it home. Just
It's a form of subliminal messaging used to dictate people's behavior.
great. Okay. All right. Other outcome. Our second outcome was to identify nudging techniques and be able to predict their outcomes. So, do you want to speak to that?
I mean, the dirt speck is a lovely idea, but I said there are training pads for puppies, dogs of all ages, where if they pee, it will be absorbed without making a mess. You could lay those around the toilets in the household until better aim has been acquired.
Any more group discussions before we reveal how you guys ready to see what your designing expertise is like? I want to see if I can award some choice architects in here today. Choice architects is the official name given to somebody who's able to create a nudge, right? Effectively. So any more discussion on our dilemma before we resort to our cards? Okay, so the scenario, remember, Kelly wants to leave the marriage because Ken keeps missing and peeing on the floor. Let's see what responses you guys have managed to come up with. Right. Get another toilet for him. Okay. All right. So let's all weigh it up. What do you think? Is that an effective nudge? Would that be an effective nudge?
No. And the
So our
cost
seats,
of
this is twice as big as this.
and not to mention the cost of
Yes.
implementing a whole
It could be costly, but the other side of that is that if you had 2 bathrooms, then maybe you could direct them to use the other bathroom, so it's not. There's something there. But okay, thank you for that. That was great. That was a good designing technique. The next one is place doggy training pads around the toilets. Okay, how do you feel about that? Think about the idea. So that means you've got it on the floors. It means you're going to miss the walls, but it's something, at least it protects the floors. Yes? So we understand that as a nudge. Instead of going on and on and on about the husband, but remember they're a married couple, newly married couple. Right? Next one, negotiation. Okay? So we're gonna,
What are we negotiating?
I guess perhaps negotiating, if you don't be on the floor, maybe,
Maybe I'll remain married to you.
okay, it's pretty drastic, but okay, these are good nudges. Let's see. Make Ken sit on toilet, pee and wipe up. Very interesting. And the beauty about nudges is that in order to get to, sorry, in order to get to a definitive action, sorry, we should, in order to get to a definitive action, it takes brainstorming of ideas. So that's what we've got here. The final one is to make a dirt spot inside the toilet bowl. Subconsciously, men tend to try to use their urine to hit dirty spots in toilets. Wow. Okay.
It's true.
Well, if you, these are all great nudges, and I think based on utilizing what we have spoken about today, you've all come up with some useful, some maybe we wouldn't go with, but some would definitely, they're all valid, all extremely valid. So I think you just may have graduated here. Let's look to your next slide and you see, you can see what's in there. There's actually a goalkeeper, right? There's a little goalie in there, so that was one idea. That's another idea you could put into place. Either put a Cheerio in there or a goal in. So let's wrap up. The nudge technique. You never know what you can do until you simply choose it. Right? I would like to present you all with your nudge technique certificates for doing so well today. And thank you so much for your time for coming. Now I'm going to ask you real quick, how many of you think that you would actually use a nudge technique in the future? Okay. By show of hands, how many think you'd actually use a nudge technique in a different way? Maybe to adjust somebody's behavior? Okay. And what do you think could have been done differently for you to learn more from the presentation today? Anybody got any suggestions? Any ways that help you?
I mean, it's simply putting it, as opposed to explain, once this first explanation is made, you could have allowed more time for different examples.
Some more time, some more examples. Thank you so much. That would be helpful. Thank you so much. All right, well, I think we're just about out of time. I hope you've enjoyed this brief overview of the nudging techniques, and I look forward to seeing you again when we come back and we take part 2 of